buddies, buddies, buddies. Hey, it's Concert Buddy. Big doings today on the channel. I'm here. If you found me on YouTube as per normal, or hopefully with the new endeavor we're kicking off with this very here broadcast for the Vinyl Community Podcast channel. If you're listening there already, thank you. You've already found us. But in short, we've come up, and myself and some other contributors, some fellow contributors from within the vinyl community on YouTube, we've decided and thought that it would be a great idea to be able to no longer limit yourself to watching a lot of this content on YouTube, having to park it and watch it on TV, your favorite device, etc. Now you're no longer anchored, you're no longer confined to enjoying or listening or learning from this content from a screen. You can now take it with you on the go through a podcast. If you're like me, I enjoy podcasts a lot, but I haven't been able to find a podcast consistently that talks records, tips, tactics, stories, information share, all these things on a regular basis. And that's one of our main goals with the Vinyl Community Podcast Project. It's podcasts for the vinyl community, by the vinyl community, to serve the vinyl community at large. And we're really hoping, as we're standing this project up, that you'll come along with us for the ride, because I think it's going to be really exciting, and there's just so much more that I could see this project really developing into. But anyway, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. For me, my first contribution to this project is as a conversation. I call it the mind of the record collector, and I'm going to be talking to fellow collectors in the vinyl community and picking their brain and learning their background, and like I said, tips and tactics, all that kind of good stuff. First up is my good friend batting leadoff, Matt Sands. Matt has been a part of the vinyl community on YouTube for over 10 years. 10 years. And he's seen a lot of changes and interruptions, and he's seen a lot of the community kind of go in different directions. So this will be a really interesting conversation, not just from that aspect, but also Matt will talk about his collecting journey personally, so much so that he and his partner Brian, actually 5 years ago opened up a record store in his hometown, Hillsboro, Illinois, called Gold Pan Records. It's a really great shop. It's well curated, priced. It's like my favorite type of record store. It's a record store owned by record collectors for record collectors. It's awesome. Anyway, that's a lot to digest right now. I'm really excited to get into it. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Matt. I certainly did. I've been looking forward for a long time to sitting down with Matt and picking his brain and learning about his YouTube experience, compare it against my own YouTube experience from the past year, and just learn and share this kind of information with you. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this. Like I said, I will be happy to, if you're watching on YouTube, all the information about Vinyl Community Podcast, I'll put it down below. But like I said, if you've already found us, you already listened to this on a podcast, man, thank you. I'm so excited, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go.
All right. What is up, buddies? Got Mr. Matt Sands in the house. Now, Matt, do I call you Matt Sands or DJ Mellow Yellow? What do you prefer? You blew my cover!
The DJ Mellow Yellow thing started as like a radio moniker. Sam and I were doing a radio show, and to kind of cross-promote, we did some videos, and we were like, we'll just do our DJ names on these videos. And then the videos unexpectedly kind of took off, and now I'm affectionately known by a lot of people as DJ Mellow Yellow. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's fine, but Matt's totally cool.
Excellent. Well, cool. Well, that's how I got to know you. Just a little backstory here. Well, first of all, how long have you been doing the YouTube thing? And then I'll kind of ease into how I learned about you.
Yeah, I actually know the exact date because last year I got a notification on my thing like, congratulations, it's been 10 years. It was June,
snap.
Yeah, June 21st of 2012 was my introduction to the vinyl community video, which I don't even think I have listed on my channel anymore. Like, there's a lot of videos that I've unlisted because they're like so cringeworthy. Yeah, so 10 plus years now, coming up on 11 years.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, the cringe thing. I talked about this in the first year, hindsighting I did with Rob on my previous little interview thing. But yeah, some of those early videos, like I just watched. I mean, it's tough.
It's
like a how not to do it, right?
Exactly. And like I was a fairly new collector. I'd only been collecting for like a couple years, and it's that I think they call it the Dunning-Kruger effect, where like when you're new to a hobby, you amass like a lot of knowledge, so you think you know a lot, when really you've only like touched the surface of the knowledge of a hobby. And so you're kind of speaking with authority, and it's like going back, it's like, that's not true at all. Like, why did I say that? Unlist.
Sure,
a lot of those kinds of videos.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So you've been YouTube for 10 years. I want to say I found your channel, golly, let's call it 6 or 7 years ago. You were one of the first channels I found out there. It was like you, Mr. Hall of Fame Brandon was doing videos. Billy Hurst, I think, was doing videos at the time.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, all local-ish, right? I had no idea that everybody was so close, right? So that kind of tripped me out. But so I got originally, it was like, DJ Mellow Yellow, because you and Sam, which we'll get into here in a little bit, were doing basically joint videos. You were doing some one-offs, on your channel, obviously, but then you guys were probably more known for doing like the hindsighting of here's what we picked up at the record show, and then you guys would interloop some music to it, especially because it's psych and all that. So that was exciting stuff. And I was kind of at a point in my collecting where I was looking for like-minded people to learn from, because you can only learn so much in a vacuum, and Googling. And if you go into the Hoffman forums, which trademark, I think they're the butthole of the vinyl community because they're so toxic, right? Like there are some people there to help and good information, but it's like anything else on the internet. Eventually it goes sour. And anyway, so in my search, in my quest, I found YouTube, and I found channels like yours and these other folks to like really learn for and lean into. And it was really helpful, to be honest with you, because you're kind of operating, like, at least for me, operating by myself, going to shows and stores. And it's exactly what you said, is like, you think, early on certain things, and then you find out, dead wrong, dead to rights.
Right. Do you remember MTV had a show it was like celebrity, like, I wish I could remember the name. It was like True Life or something, but the intro was always like, you think you have no idea. It's like, that's record one. Like, you think no way. Because that's how I found the vinyl community on YouTube. It was like, I remember searching on Google like the best way to clean records, and Wes, Super Wes, has a massively popular video about this DIY vacuum machine that he made. And I remember watching that and then being like, what other videos does this guy have? It was like, he makes videos showing records. And then like you would read comments and find other channels, and like, especially at that time, it was a pretty small community of vinyl people, like actually just showing vinyl records. And then I found people like Mark Ditch at Glass Orchid Aftermath, or Bo at Earhead 6, Chris at Dixieland Farm, like some of those guys that were showing the 60s kind of stuff. Dixieland Farm still kind of makes videos. The other guys are kind of hit and miss still. But like at that time, it was like, these guys have been collecting like for 20 years. Like, what can I learn from them? And then you just kind of strike up friendships. And then it was like, well, I want to make these videos too. And you kind of, I don't know, just kind of eased into it that way a little bit. It was cool.
Interesting. So how did, so when you decided to take the plunge, right, to move to the other side of the camera 10 years ago now, how did you get, well, one, talk about your relationship with Sam. I'm assuming you guys are friends for a while, but then also like bringing him on board in that journey. Like, how does that work? How do you pitch that idea? Like, hey, do you know about YouTube? Do you know about this? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
It was, so my first video was 2012. We were living in Southern Illinois, and it was exactly like you said, like, I was the only person I knew that collected records, and this was a way to connect with other collectors. I didn't even know about the St. Louis Record Show at that time. That was a couple years later still for me. But we moved back up to kind of central Illinois and reconnected with Sam, who wasn't too far away. We'd gone to college together. And I don't know, I think he and his wife came over to our house one day, and he was like, holy crap, you have records. And I was like, yeah, I kind of collect them. And he was like, dude, I have a lot of records. Like, I collect. It was like, no way. Like, how did we not know this? You know, we've known each other since like 2004.
Is this like that Step Brothers moment where they just realize they're two sides of the coin?
Best friends. Yeah.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
So he started talking. He was like, yeah, I'm in charge of the radio station. And over the summer, he's like, I have a slot to fill. Let's just do a radio show for the summer and we'll see what happens. And we can kind of play our records that we find, and it's a way for us to kind of get together and maybe an excuse to go record digging and stuff.
Sure.
And that's how that started. And then we just kept going with the radio show because it was like one of those weird things of like, we're doing the radio show, and we're talking about records. And I was kind of like, do you ever watch YouTube videos about record collecting? You know, I didn't want to like tell him, you know, it was like
dirty little
find out you have an OnlyFans, you know, or something. And so he was like, no, is there like a thing? I was like, yeah, I make videos and some other people do. And so he watched a couple. He was like, we should do this together. Like, why are we not making videos about the radio show? Like, maybe we could promote the radio show. And it was wholly like, we were hoping distributors would like send us free records, or concerts would send us tickets to shows. Like, that was the whole point of the first couple of videos. But then it just became way more fun doing the videos even than just doing the radio show. So it was like, you know, we would do a couple shows at the radio station, and then I would bring my camera stuff and we'd shoot a video and post it. And then once we did our first top 10 video is when the channel kind of took off and got a lot of notice. It must have hit the YouTube algorithm just right, and got a lot of views pushed our way, and we started getting subscribers and people wanting more videos, and the radio show kind of took the back burner, and the videos kind of took precedence. And then I had a kid and a new job, and production went down, like productivity went down, but we still try. And I've actually got one edited that I need to upload here in like a couple days. I got some finishing touches on it, but there's another one in the bag, and we still want to do another top 10 of 2022. We just haven't had a chance to get together yet. So
that's wild. Yeah, because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, like is it a hobby, like photography and film editing and stuff? Because I know you've done some stuff for, correct me if I'm wrong, the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, it was kind of just kind of a side hobby, side project kind of thing that I did. I picked up a camera and really liked using it. And then I had a friend that was doing wedding videos that needed a second shoot. And I started doing that, making some extra money on the side. I had the gear. It was like, there were some moments where it was like, we would literally just set up the camera, not even put a microphone on it, and just bang out a video. There was some where we took time to light it. So if you go back through, there's some where it's like, oh, they tried on this one. And other ones where it's like, oh, well, they did one, you know. But I always tried to edit music in and like pictures. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. So we talked about kind of your motivation, similar to mine, similar probably to a lot of people, was just finding like-minded people. Now, I will say I was kind of one of those creepers. Like, I would watch your guys' content. I'd watch Brandon's, whoever, and I would never comment because I mostly watched it like on our TV, right?
Oh, yeah.
Through like Apple TV or what have you. So it was only in the last couple of years I kind of figured, yeah, that's probably the first touch point to interact with different people. But then I had it under my government name, and
yeah,
it was kind of weird. So I think everyone has kind of their own different dipping their toe in the bathwater, be it making the videos, being a contributor in the comments, all that kind of stuff. But when you started the channel, obviously you said kind of your goals were just to connect with people, connect with collectors, learn things. And then later when you brought Sam in and you guys were doing your collective thing through the radio station and whatnot, it sounded like maybe you'll get some promo records, maybe you'll get some concert tickets, that kind of stuff. As the channel matured and as you really started making some, connections like offline or what have you, your goals change? I mean, obviously you talk about availability and life changed for you in a lot of different fronts, but did your ambition or goals for the channel change at all? Or is it same as it's ever been?
Yeah, for me, it's always just been like, if I'm having fun with it, I want to do it. If it stops being fun, I'm going to stop doing it. And there have been a few times where I've gotten a negative comment or something, and I've been like, I'm not making a video for 3 or 4 months. Like, it just soured me, and it's like, that was so stupid to let that little comment bother me that much. But, it's just sometimes you're in a bad headspace or something and it gets to you more than it should. But for me, it's always just been about the fun, about connecting with people. I know Sam has been talking more about wanting to do a podcast, wanting to do more with the channel, which is awesome. I hope that I can. I hope that I can do more with the channel with him. It's just work schedules, and I've got a 5-year-old. He doesn't have any kids, so there's demands that I've got that he doesn't, which is, neither here nor there. It just is what it is for both of us. So it's just one of those, like, trying to find the right time. We also live a little farther apart now. My wife and I moved a year and a half ago. So I'm about an hour and 15 minutes from Sam now instead of like 45 minutes. So there's a little extra drive time involved for both of us. So connecting is a little bit hard to try to grow the channel and make it consistent. He wants to get some of his own video equipment to him, we can maybe do stuff like this where we record each other at home and edit the thing together. I don't know. We're trying some things out, and we'll see where it goes. But I don't have any lofty ambitions of it getting to be like a Noble Records, like 75,000 subscribers kind of a thing.
Sure.
But it was fun having Dylan like start as like one of those lurkers in the comments, and then see him like comment like, "Hey, I made my first video today," and it's like, "Oh, that's cool. You've been watching our channel for a long time," and now he's like, sky high YouTube guy. But I don't know. I know Sam would love some loftier ambitions from me, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens down the road.
No, I hear you. We'll talk about one of those other life things here in a little bit. We'll talk about your shop. It's one thing I really want to dig into. But yeah, well, first of all, if Sam's looking for a podcast collective, I know a guy. I'm just saying. So,
yes. Which when you mentioned that earlier, I was like, I know a guy. I've got a guy for you.
Yeah, but no. So talking about now, you're doing it for 10 years. Like, what are some of the things that you've really noticed as not only a creator of videos, but obviously as a watcher and so forth in that 10 years? Again, somebody's watching it 6 or 7 years. Like, it's very interesting that there's so many more people doing it. You kind of hit on it with like somebody like Dylan, who I watched, when you guys collaborated on something like this before during COVID, he credited you guys as being one of those channels that inspired him to kind of start same thing, like as anybody out there, SOS. And then, now he's one of the big kahunas in this whole sea. Right. But what have you noticed just from the last 10 years and tell me about it.
Yeah, I think there were 2 shifts in the vinyl community, maybe more, but I remember like there were the OGs, like the Chris's at Dixieland Farm. There's a ton of guys that aren't around anymore, like Nathan Morales, the Grecian Thunder, River Curd, like some of these guys that were like first to the video stuff. I know Brandon was an early guy on making videos. A lot of those guys kind of faded. There was a surge on Facebook of the YouTube vinyl community group. Like there was a period there for about 2.5 years where it was just like people were making videos and you would see it pop up on the Facebook group. People would talk about the videos. They had what was called like a VC After Dark on Facebook, where like the jokes were a little dirtier, a little edgier. Like people were showing like funny covers and stuff. It was just like there was a vibrant, thriving community. Like it felt like a group. And it felt contained. And then at a certain point, it was like, holy cow, there are like 2,000 people in this Facebook group. Most of them don't make videos. And then the video creators kind of started going down, and then new people came in. That was kind of the first shift. And then the second shift was monetized channels that started coming in. Like the quality of their videos was really high. The content was whatever. I don't want to mention like anybody specifically because I don't want to feel like they're being called out, but it was just, there were a couple that popped up at that time that was like, oh, they're trying to like be a big creator. And that was kind of around the time where YouTube was really paying big money for big subscribers, big views. You didn't have all these rules in place. Like you didn't have to have a subscriber threshold. It was just like, if you had one video that hit, you made money. So you had people like that kind of coming along, mainly doing intro videos like, here's some good record players to buy. Here's some good introductory records. Here's some, one of those channels is still around. Matt at Too Many Records. He actually had a channel that was called Damn It Sandy. He and a female presenter. I really enjoyed their channel. I enjoyed the banter they had. He's gone on to open his own record store, and his channel is pretty popular. But it was like his content looked great. Vinyl Geek, Vinyl Rewind. His content looked great. He's still around. He's still making great videos. But there was kind of that shift where it was no longer just like a dude in front of his webcam, showing a dirty, dusty record cover in his sweatpants. Like it was like, oh, these are like professional people. These guys are serious about it. That felt second shift. And now it's like there's just so many different creators out there. You've got kind of a mix of those kind of higher quality content creators, and you've got just a massive amount of people that have found vinyl community videos and they want to contribute in their own way. And it's almost overwhelming now. Like you just type in vinyl community in the YouTube search bar and it's just the first 300 videos that pop up. I'm like, I know none of these people. Like I've never seen them. I don't know their names. And some of them have a lot of subscribers, and it's really cool to see, but it has lost a little bit of, I think, that community feel that there was kind of in those early couple years. But that's the nature of the beast. That's how things go when they get popular, and records are super popular again. And that's a good thing for us. As collectors, we want record stores to be around. We want records to keep being made. And if it means that there's less of a community feel on YouTube, oh well.
No, I think you touch on something that's really important, at least to me and probably to other people listening and watching, is the community aspect. And even in the time I've been watching like a creeper in the shadows to this last year, making videos, those shifts, there's a lot there is an ebb and flow. And I've noticed, and like using too many records, a polarizing figure in some areas of the vinyl community. But I was watching it. He was one of the first channels I was watching. And I think I caught him at the tail end of the Damn It Sandy era, and then when he started doing on his own, and then he brought in another gal as a co-host. So different phases, because I think I started watching him when he had maybe between 5,000 and 10,000 subs. So he was mired, I noticed from afar, and the how do I grow my channel. He was really ambitious, right? And so he would go on the Reddit boards and try to crowdsource ideas for content. So I kind of took these mental notes. But anyway, I noticed that once, not just him, but once some of these channels, exactly what we were talking about, reached a different level from subscribers, monetization, whatever the poo-poo platter is that makes them kind of break out into their own lane. Vinyl Rewind's another one, right? It felt like it touches on something I've talked about on live stream, like Rachel's Ghost live stream and some other places, that it feels like the bigger channels aren't as the community thing aren't as engaged or plugged into that community matrix of, for lack of a better word, the smaller channels, right? And it's interesting. It's interesting because even Michael 45, who's within the last 5 years channel right over in Germany, started watching him from Jump Street. I think Mazzy had kind of gave him a plug one time, and we all start with the same ambition, and we're really talking about records, and you're passionate about it, and you have fun with it, and he's doing different things too, right? He's kind of taking his channel in different directions. So it's interesting that the things you're noticing are the things I'm noticing too in a different way. But I think that's it's that old saying, the one constant in life is change. Same thing goes for this environment, right? So it's interesting times. But I'm with you. If there wasn't this much interest and fervor, and even people getting into the hobby, even getting a Crosley suitcase tape turntable from Bed Bath & Beyond, which I'm not going to knock on, but you know what I mean? It really benefits the hobby at large, because the more demand there is, the more tone poets are going to be made. The labels will put more emphasis on bringing things from the vault, or trying to remaster things, or like acoustic sounds, right? Chad Kassem's business, I'm sure he'd never say this, but his business has to have thousandized, I don't know, quintuple. I mean, just in the last 5 to 10 years, just based on this vinyl. I know they call it vinyl resurgence or what have you, but you know what I mean? Like just that renewed interest, and now it's more mainstream and more, it's really, really wild.
Yeah, for sure.
So you hit on something that I want to go kind of segue to this next topic. Talking about Matt at Too Many Records, perfect example. Going from the YouTube thing and collecting to then saying, I'm going to open a store. And you were one of the early ones that I noticed. Maybe there's other ones, because again, the vinyl community is so vast that I think I'm in it, like the Matrix, and then once I get on the algorithm, and then I learn there's a whole nother, it's fascinating. But tell me about the genesis, the ideation of saying, you know what, I want to open a store. Like, what was the walk? And I mean, it takes, I'll be honest, it takes a lot to kind of take that next level to, you know, obviously amass a lot of records and to stand it up and stuff. So tell me what went into the idea behind it and saying, you know what, I'm going to rubber to road. Let's lift this off the ground.
Man, so it's a long story, and I have a tendency to get long-winded, so I'll try my best to kind of condense it down into kind of the nitty-gritty.
Sure.
My friend and business partner, Brian, his name's Brian Lee. He makes music as well. Brian Lee and his orchestra, and the Young Eyes are kind of his two bands. Check them out. But when we lived in Southern Illinois, we'd come home to visit family, and there was a great local thrift store. Like, there was a guy in town that it was his life's mission to stock this thrift store with records. So he would go to yard sales and stuff, and whatever records he bought, he just donated to the thrift store. So I would bump into Brian a lot there, digging for records. And then I found out that Brian was doing a consignment deal at a local coffee shop where he was selling some records. And I was like, well, I'll go check these out. And I went and was like, holy crap, this is like a miniature record store in a coffee shop. And his prices were ridiculously low. Like, for a beginning collector, I was cheap. I didn't want to spend more than like $5 average on a record. You know, I could come home with like a stack of 30 records, and it was like I spent $40. You know, it was I got a lot of essential classics that way. I got some hard to find stuff that way. And then when we moved back home, once a week I was at his record store, like checking it out, whether or not he had new stuff or not. I wanted to go and see. And we kept bumping into each other. And one day he was like, hey, I got the St. Louis record, but I still there. But I could really use somebody that could go with me and man the booth while I buy records. I was like, sure, that sounds great. And so I was like,
struggle, right?
Store credit. Yeah, exactly. It was like, I get store credit for going to a record show. This is amazing. So we started doing that over and over. And then like the friendship kind of blossomed. Our geeking out on records, you know, like went to the next level. You know, it was like elevated. And we started talking about like, how cool would it be to have a record store in our small town, Hillsboro, Illinois. 6,000 people. We're smack dab in between Springfield, Illinois and St. Louis, Missouri. It was like, we are tired of like driving all over the place to go find records. Like, it'd be cool to just have a spot here in town. If we ever get the chance, we should do it. That'd be great. But it was just one of those, like, it's like when you're a little, wouldn't it be awesome to have a limo with a swimming pool? You know, it's like, it's just a dream that you have no intention of it ever coming true. But fast forward a few years, and another friend of ours moved back from Colorado. He bought a building downtown. Brian is a carpenter by trade. That's his day job. So he was renovating the building. And he just asked our friend one day, like, hey, what are you going to do with the storefront? Like, do you have any ideas? Any businesses approached you? And he was like, well, actually, in the back, I'm going to have a recording studio, but I have no idea about the front. And he was like, would you consider a record store? And he was like, that would be amazing. Who do you know? Brian was like, well, actually, me and Matt.
I have a guy.
So, yeah. So we met at the local pizza place, and he gave us a number for rent. And Brian and I were like, that sounds great if we can do month by month. It was like, we don't want to lock into a lease because we don't know if this is going to last. And he was like, totally cool. If it doesn't work out, I'll find somebody to fill the storefront. And so we started looking for records immediately. We posted on Facebook, like, hey, we're opening a record store. Devin's going to have a recording studio in the back. The town got super excited. We got a lot of leads. We bought every record we could kind of leading up to it. Some other friends of ours ran an antique store in town. They let us sell records out of their store. They took like 10%. I mean, a super small cut just so that somebody was there to sell them. And it let us build up some more cash so we could buy more records, so we could buy material for bins and the iPad for the Squares, reader, like all that kind of nitty-gritty stuff. Yeah. Because we didn't want to take out a loan. We really thought like our wildest dream was like, this will last 6 months and we'll be able to say we owned a record store at one point and we might get some cool records out of the deal. That was literally our loftiest goal. We didn't even write a business plan down.
Wow.
It was the most like hillbilly
from the hip. Sure.
Yes. From the hip, like no plan, just wing it. The worst way to open any kind of business, but that was just what we did. And here we are. I think we opened in March of 2018, so we're coming up on being open for 5 years now.
That's awesome. And
that is as condensed as I can make it, and that was long.
No, you did a great job of that, because I got a couple follow-ups, but for the record, and you probably don't remember because that weekend was a blur, I did make the trek up there for your opening weekend at the Gold Pan. The Gold Pan Records is your store.
Did you bring your wife with you?
Yes. She asked me what, we didn't have anything going on. I was like, hey, do you want to go check out? And she had, I'd watched your video, so she had like a general familiarity of like whose store we're going to. And so we came up for that opening weekend, and man, it had to be like a real charge to have people in. And tell me how long it took you. You said like you guys were going around amassing records, but at the same time selling, so you could generate some working capital and stuff like that. How long did it take you from the moment or the day or week or whatever you're like, yeah, we're going to do this, amassing records and all that, till actually that weekend opening in Hillsboro?
It would have been just under a year, probably 8 months or so would be my guess. Because I think we met in June of 2017. I remember my daughter was born. She was born in April, and I had her with me at the meeting at the pizza place. So I want to say it was like June of 2017, and then we opened in March. So whatever the math is on that, and March was probably pushing it for us to open. We probably should have waited a little longer, but the building was ready and we were too excited. We could have used a lot more records. We could have used a lot more like professional looking stuff. Like knowing that you were there that first weekend is like somebody finding my vinyl community introduction video. It's like, oh gosh, like, come now, like come to the store now. Don't remember that. Like,
hey, no, listen, it has, and I'll say I haven't been up there in a minute, but I'll say that weekend, and I hate to say this, it's kind of predatory vibes, but you're like, oh, somebody's opening a new store, I can find more records. And I do remember, I think I pulled like an Amy Grant record, which like heart to heart or moment to moment, whatever it's called, right? But it was on my list, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this record, I finally found this record. It wasn't like a Grail, or it wasn't anything, but I'm like, oh, so for me that made the whole hour and a half, 90-minute trip up there worth it, because I'm like, great, now I don't have to look for this Amy Grant record anymore. So when you guys, you opened the store, and you said, you're like, oh, just, if anything, we open this for 6 months, and we can say we don't, check the boxes. We owned a record store at one time, but it was part of your thinking. I mean, obviously you have to make some money on the deal. Like, it could be real successful and take off, but also, and please tell me if I'm got this off base, but also accessibility, right? Because you got to hustle, you got to grind and find these collections. But then when you find them, getting, for lack of a better word, first dibs on stuff that a lot of people don't ever see, even if they hunt for 5-10 years. So are those some of the other motivating factors of kind of getting the store off the ground?
Oh, totally. We we kind of joke, like when we were dreaming of the idea, it was like, we'd go to the record shows and Brian would sell. He would use some of that money that he made from selling to buy stuff for his store, but also for himself. So he kind of already had an avenue to get records in where he wasn't spending his own personal money, if that makes sense. Sure. And so we were like, this would be the perfect like record laundering business where we can get these expensive records with the store's money, and we can tell our wives that we didn't spend any money. So it was like, that was definitely a big selling point on having a record store, and it has come to fruition a few times where like you find that record, like, oh my gosh, yes, look what I found. What did you spend on it? Nothing. It came from the record store.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks hopefully listening and watching this that can relate to the honey, I didn't spend as much money on records as you think. Meanwhile, there's a big stack of mailers waiting in a corner somewhere, right? So they kind of get it, right? Yes. But so then last thing, talk about the store. So I know you guys are open, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's definitely Friday and Saturday. Sometimes you expand hours a little bit. So obviously you have a full-time job. It sounds like Brian also has a full-time job, if I picked up on that. So is that the hardest thing, is this finding time to make sure that one of you guys is there? I'm sure you could hire somebody, or somebody that it seems like the secret sauce is another collector will work there and get store credit or something like that. is the main thing keeping you guys from opening more longer hours? Is it just the manpower and just finding that time, or?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. When we first opened, we thought we could split the shifts. We're mainly Friday and Saturday, like 12:30 to 5, and those hours came because at the time I was working. I still work for the Postal Service, but I had just started. I was working in a really small rural office where I got off work at like noon, and I could make the drive over real quick, open the store at 12:30, and then Brian could work whatever other shift I didn't work. And within like a month and a half, it was like, this is not working. Like, I'm getting called to work other offices. Brian's got projects that are coming up that he can't really take time to go to the store. Like, we were doing it, but it was like, we're not paying ourselves anything working at the record store, so we're losing money for ourselves if we don't take the jobs.
Sure.
Like, we got to find somebody. So it took a few months, and we found a guy named Josh that was kind of a regular buyer, was kind of a cool guy, had a lot of knowledge about records, like a wide swath of records. And so since probably June or so of 2018, he's been our hired help. He works every shift, even if Brian are there the whole time. Like, he's our guy behind the counter. So if we have to leave or if we get called away, there's no guilt for us to leave, and we know somebody's there manning it that we can trust. Like, we even are cool with him buying collections on our behalf now. Like, we just trust him that much and know he knows our kind of strategy. We know his knowledge base, and we trust him implicitly with everything. And that has saved the record store 100%. Like, if we didn't have him, I don't think we could be open. And so it's also kind of like Friday and Saturday, still Thursdays through kind of the holiday season, because we want Josh to be able to do his thing and work a different job if he needs to that pays more than what the record store can pay him.
Sure.
But we also do like a store credit thing if he decides like to take some records in lieu of pay, which has been fun for him too. Like, he's on first name basis with a lot of the regulars that we don't necessarily know. Yeah, he's been invaluable for sure.
Yeah, I think one of my working hypotheses is that hypothesis. Yeah, hypothesize is because I think any collector, kind of talking on those points I was kind of bringing up there, is like, yeah, it'd be cool to own a record store. Everything you're saying, it'd be cool to own a record store. It'd be a lot of work. You'd find great stuff, those things, right? But the hardest part is getting it off the ground. And my working theory is that you almost have to have at least one partner, but you even talked about having like essentially a third part ways, right? Like, that's what makes like somebody like Dylan Noble Records, right? He very similar kind of story that you were talking about, somebody selling records around town, and then he gets the store, and obviously had the support of his wife. But I find his kind of rise and business model kind of the exception, because Matt Too Many Records, had a partner at first. Like, you almost need, because there's only so many hours in the day. And I know like Billy Hurst, Riverbend Records, same thing. Like, obviously wife supports him, and they find, hours to staff that, that way. And he hired people, but Brandon, goes up there and works too. So do you think that is not essential, but it's almost, if you don't have that, it makes it a million times tougher? Would you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. It takes so much pressure off just having an extra person there. Like, I remember the first collection I bought on my own, like, Brian was, we kind of put the message out there and cast the net of, we want to buy records. And I went and looked at this lady's house. It was in the middle of nowhere. I had like one bar of cell phone service if I stood up on her deck. And it was this big classic rock collection. And she wanted a certain number, and I wanted to pay a certain thing. And I called Brian, like, hey, man, you've been buying for years. Like, how do I talk her down? Like, or how do I convince her that she doesn't have what she thinks she has or can? So he kind of talked me through some tips. That was helpful. And so that was kind of the learning curve there. But it's just nice to have somebody else there that can share the workload of, like, we just bought 2,000 records and we need to have them all priced before next weekend. Like, here's half of them, here's my half, and let's go to town on them. Or just staying up late and pricing or ordering stuff or cleaning the shop or building the bin, like, whatever it is. It's just nice to have another person there, and to have a third person is even more amazing. Like you said, Dylan, and like, he is 100% the exception, because I know he's got the ability to stay up to like 4 or 5 a.m. and then he's at the store at like 7:30 or 8 a.m. Like, if I don't get my 7 hours on me for like 3 days because I'm a monster. So he's
I'm
just
convinced.
got that
I'm convinced.
that.
Yeah, I think he's like, remember that movie Blade? Wesley Snipes was like a day walking vampire. I'm convinced
Yes.
like Dylan's got a little of that going on because, like to your point, I mean, just from 50,000 feet away, it seems like he's always up late because he does these Instagram posts late at night or what have you. And I mean, it takes a special kind because I love sleep. I love naps and I love sleep. So again, another reason for me not to open a record store. My wife is always like, oh, especially during COVID, you really should open a record store. You're kind of listless in your job and all. And again, it sounds like a great idea, but for me, like I felt like I would need definitely a 1A, 1B situation. And 2, like St. Louis, and maybe you feel the same way, is there's so many record stores. It's kind of sneaky how many records, the volume and the quality. If you're talking about the solidly curated shops, even you've got the OG like vintage vinyl, like there's just so much variety. There's even the shops that I won't name, but you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit for everybody. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I never took that leap, for lack of better words, is need that backup person. So much competition, all that stuff. So that's why I really admire your business model, because when you have the right hand person, or you have the 1A, 1B situation. And it sounds like, and I think you told me this before when we talked about it, that your community didn't really have something like this, right? Like you didn't, you guys were going to like thrift stores, like you kind of led off with that story, the thrift store guy you knew, but you're kind of serving a public need in a lot of ways. And I know when you first opened the store, you told me that too, because you said that there would be people like, man, it's so cool to have a record store. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people like me, like you, we enjoy to use records because they're generally cheaper, and sometimes they're out of print and you can't get them new. Like anybody can pick up a phone and, get an Amazon delivery the next day, but trying to find stuff that for whatever reason's never been repressed, reissued, the reissues are hot trash. You know what I mean? Like there's just something that's what drew me to the hobby, honestly, outside of, my mom really being a big music head, and, me having that kind of working or relationship with vinyl when I was a kid, and obviously CDs all came through and all that, but it helped to know that, I was like, this sounds silly. I think we even talked about this, like the American Pickers thing, right? Like knowing that you're finding something that someone for whatever reason has kind of not discarded, but just they're ready to move on from, and like rehoming that like really spoke to me. And so when I was 10 years ago going to Goodwills, doing like the poo-poo platter of how a lot of people build their collections, thrift stores, antique stores, Craigslist. Remember, you could, I don't know if you used to be able to get records on Craigslist. Maybe you still can. I gave up on it because it got too weird, right? But yard sales, all those places that people were generationally moving on from the format, and you could get records for 10 for $1, 50 cents a piece. All these prices that now I think people listening and hearing this are like, no way. And we'll talk about the price points in a little bit, but it's almost like two gone eras. Like there's the people who have been doing like 10 years ago, it was almost like a completely different situation. It's wild.
It's so true. It really is. And you mentioned, I kind of want to go back real quick.
Sure.
It was something like our town needed. Brian, as a carpenter, like he and his father-in-law own a couple apartment buildings in town. And they have renovated a bunch of storefronts in town. They own a couple, but they've also renovated some for other people. So the record store was kind of a dual purpose for him. Like it was something that he wanted to have in town. Like, I think this will make our town cooler and will attract more people, which hopefully, brings more people shop, to live, to whatever. And our town was kind of going through a little bit of a renaissance a few years ago, and it's still kind of on that upward trajectory. Midwest Living magazine just did a feature on us in the fall and winter edition about our town, and the Gold Pan got a mention, which was cool. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening in our town. And it was like when people were talking about like, oh, there's so many neat things happening. You would mention cool stuff like, oh, it'd be so cool to have a record store and this and that. And people would be like, oh, that would never work here. It's like, well, I think it would. Like, if you think it would be cool to have, like, do it. And that was our goal, was also to kind of prove people wrong. Like, no, even though we're a small town and we're kind of in the middle of rural Illinois, like if you're into it, other people are into it too. You just may not know it. It was that vinyl community thing of like discovering other people are into the same thing you are. We've now got a really sweet coffee shop. We've got a movie theater that has 3 screens downtown. We've got this like crazy upscale home goods store.
That's awesome.
There's a candy store opening 2 doors down from us. Hopefully this spring. There's a manufacturer called Atlas 46 that came to Hillsboro and now is just employing like 150 people in town. I mean, it's just things are taking off in a really cool way, and we feel kind of blessed to be a part of it, I guess, and just kind of to show other people like you can invest your money and you'll be able to see a return on it eventually. Like we haven't, but you might be able to.
No, it's cool to be part of that movement, right? Like I definitely think there's a nostalgia and also just a kind of romanticism with small town America. And obviously I've been to the store and it's kind of like a main drag. You got the theater across the street. You're one of several, kind of storefronts because again, to touch on the American Pickers thing, they talk about it all the time. Like those type of towns are kind of drying up. You have the mass merchant, box retailers coming in and, the paint store and the hardware store and the general store are all in one at Walmart or whoever. Right. So it's it's neat because it kind of just kind of touches on that, but also like you're saying, like I don't want to use Renaissance. I want to put words in your mouth, but just definitely a catalyst of change to, all the community can have like pride in. And I'm sure a lot of people are glad that there's a 3-screen theater that they don't have to drive a half hour out of the way to go to Springfield or wherever to go see a movie. So that's great.
Sure. And there's a really good brewery and there's another one opening, hopefully this spring as well. Like a big hotel renovation went on and it's a brewery and distillery and restaurant. Which will be super cool. So like both ends of downtown are going to have really good breweries. So you can kind of hit one up, walk the main drag, do some shopping, finish your day at the other brewery and restaurant and head back wherever you're from. So it's going to be pretty cool.
That's real cool. So kind of touched on it a little bit talking about like the record store and obviously you're somebody, and I know this obviously they've bought from you, but the whatnot thing going on, talking about the hobby taking different directions because, when it comes to online, the online thing is also something I feel accelerated the interest and the accessibility of people finding records, obviously eBay and Discogs and all those sorts of things. But now the whatnot phenomenon is here. And I know you guys have done a couple auctions. Like I said, I've bought something from you. What has been your experience from the seller side? And do you think, has it been positive? Has it been something that, tell me in your own words, like what's your experience been with whatnot?
Yeah, it's been a positive experience. We've done 2 whatnot shows and I've done a couple just kind of YouTube live stream sales. Both have had their pluses and minuses. The whatnot one, super positive because it's super easy. Like it is from a seller standpoint, ridiculously easy to sell on whatnot. The 2 that we did, we kind of, at the time we had some overstock. We were wanting to raise some extra funds. We had stuff that had been sitting for a while. So it was like, let's throw this stuff up there. We've got a number in mind that we hope to hit total. We ended up hitting the number both times. And shipping is super easy. You can just print the labels out. You slap it on the box and drop it off at the post office. For me, I work for the Postal Service. So I just take them to work with me and mail them out. You get a decent crowd. When we started, we were kind of an early adopter, as far as sellers go. And since then, it's a lot of people have joined. Dylan from Noble Records is on there. Matt from Too Many Records is on there. Michael from the In Groove is on there. It's big time records. But I've seen live streams like Billy Hurst at Riverbend does the live stream on Facebook a lot. The thing that for me, it was like, I don't know, we did pretty well. And then when Dylan did his stream, and even when Billy, I watched a couple of Billy's, and it was like they would put records up, and it was like, how are these going for this price? Like, what happened? Like, I remember like a Sticky Fingers, like a VG Sticky Fingers was like $60. I was like, I have that in my store right now for 15. Like, I'll put that up, and I would put it up, and it would go for 15. It was like, but it just went for 60. So it's like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what are these guys doing? But it's a different crowd. It's a different audience. And there's a different aspect to like, maybe somebody feels like they want to buy something from that person and not necessarily like they want that record. I think that factors into pricing. But anyway, but I think it's a cool thing. I think it's a cool avenue. I do think Whatnot at first seemed like it was geared really towards newer collectors. Like the sellers at the time had kind of basic stuff, and the people on there were pretty excited about the basic stuff, which is cool. At least there was an avenue for that. But now it seems like it is getting kind of the broader spectrum of stuff. You got high end stuff. You've got like I said, Michael from the In Groove selling his high end.
Yeah, once Esposito came into the waters, it kind of and then obviously Dylan, like some of the people
the sharks. It's like here it is. It's the feeding frenzy now. So
yeah. I've heard similar things. Like I've talked to Billy about his Whatnot experience, and then obviously I've heard some different feedback on live streams for like Esposito and whatnot. But that was a Freudian slip, by the way. Whatnot was, but I don't know. I haven't really made up my mind personally as a buyer on it. It kind of like you said, like you guys are one of the first kind of like folks that put your toe in the bathwater. And I anywhere that sells records, I'll usually like check out. Right, that's just the mind of the collector, because it could be an untapped horizon of things you just what I mean. You have to leave no stone unturned, and I do think that there is some interesting elements that they've layered in terms of the presentation. Like there is the interaction, but I think it's kind of a brief. Like if like you guys were like really interacting with us when we be on the thing, but some of these are so big. There's 200-300 people. Like to Esposito, Dylan. I mean, they can't talk to everybody. That kind of thing. But then also, I think they've done a masterful job, and this is just my feedback, of really. I wouldn't say praying, but really playing up the FOMO, and especially the way they do the clocks, because they do like an early eBay. Because remember, you didn't used to have set prices on eBay. For years ago, it used to be only auctions. And if you're like me, you figured out a way to really nuance and know when you had to like between 4 and 6 seconds left in the auction, you had to submit it, and you could swoop in and snipe it, right? But it's very interesting. Like I said, I haven't really made up my mind yet. Like I haven't abandoned it, because there's some people like you sell on there. Harry's Record Room. He's a YouTube guy. He's been selling 45. So I'll jump in and kind of check that stuff out. But no, you hit it on the head. I've heard a lot of feedback that talking about you have a record at 15 and the same record sold for 60. I think there is some of that social proof. And somebody buying a record from seller X saying, "Oh, I bought a record from," you know what I mean? So, and to each their own. I mean, if that makes them happy, more power to them. But
for sure, and I will never fault the seller for capitalizing on that either. It's like if you can make the money and people are willing to buy it and they're happy, if you're getting good feedback, if you're selling it for an inflated price and then somebody later on is mad about it, like there's a little bit of like the impetus is on the buyer a little bit, but at the same time, like don't keep doing it over and over.
Sure.
But if it's happening and people are happy about it, if it was us and we had made triple what we thought we were going to make, I'd be doing one of these every week. It just is what it is. But for us, it was just kind of, we needed the cash at the time. We had the overstock and we did it. We were on there when they weren't even offering media mail shipping, which was it was a pain in the butt. That was kind of one of the downsides. And I let our rep know, like, this is garbage. Like people are going to get postage, do things. And he told me kind of behind the scenes stuff, what was going on. But I haven't even been on as a buyer in a while. So I don't know, is it still kind of the Wild West, or is there a little bit more of
I think it's still like casino-ish in the sense of the countdown and all that stuff. But no, you hit on a real good point, because I'll give them a lot of credit, the Whatnot people, is they've really listened to some of that feedback, because those first auctions from the first sellers, it was priority only, and nobody wanted to pay $9 for shipping. And like when I ordered from you, like it was just the way it was, you know what I mean? Like and so even things now, like Billy Hurst was telling me, like in-store pickup of something, because his community, when he does the Facebook auctions, it's his local, a lot of it's his local clientele, and they just want to buy it on Facebook and then come up and pick it up that week. And so it sounds like that's, to Whatnot's credit, they're hearing the feedback and making the change. So if they weren't, I think it'd really turn off a lot of sellers. But
for sure, And the YouTube thing has been really good for us, because we were able to sell, like, we tried some psychedelic kind of records on Whatnot, and there just wasn't the crowd for that.
Sure.
So I just, on my personal YouTube page, did it. And there was, of course, a lot of interest, because that's the kind of stuff I show, and I have that kind of audience. And we also had some local people shop on there that were like, cool, I can do local pickup now, and I don't have to get hit with $5 shipping or $9 shipping or whatever. And or if it was like I don't know, we could just kind of do more deals. It was like, no matter what you buy, it's $5 shipping, or if you're international, we'll cap it at 30. You're not getting hit with the live stream, the whatnot shipping tiered or whatever you want to call it. But I think it's kind of a cool avenue, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Like you said, it was very interactive, and we'll probably do another one down the road, but there's not any immediate plans to make it a regular thing.
Gotcha. I want to touch on something. I'm glad you said the psych thing, because I didn't. It was in my rundown here, but I didn't really touch on it. So from the outsider looking in, obviously psych music is 50 plus years old. Like that's your lane. Like for lack of a better word, like that's what you really gravitate towards. How did that happen? Because generationally, obviously, I would assume maybe your parents listened to it, or a brother or whatever. Like, how did you gravitate to that style? Because it's a very unique style. And like, I've tried to, like, I have some 13th floor, you know what I mean? Like, I've dipped my toe in the bathwater, but it hasn't like pulled me like it's pulled you or like Dylan or anybody else. So what drew you to that particular lane of music?
That's a really good question. Growing up, my dad played music a ton, like classic rock radio. So we listened to a lot of 70s and 80s stuff. Not a ton of 60s. Like he had the Beatles, the one cassette tape, with all their greatest hits or their number one hits. And he had a Beach Boys greatest hits tape. And then he had a Herman's Hermits greatest hits tape, which I don't know why that was the one that he loved. But otherwise, my dad is super into 70s music, like soft rock, which I also have a soft spot for, like yacht rock kind of sounding stuff. But
love yacht rock.
Yeah, I'm totally into it. But yeah, I don't know, something about like I just kind of got into the Beatles, and then from there it was sort of like, as I got older, it was like, what were they influenced by? What was kind of happening at the time? Like Sgt. Pepper's is a cool album. What else sounds like that? And you kind of go down the rabbit hole. And for whatever reason, that style and that sound, especially the heavier psych stuff, like with the fuzz guitars and the stereo panning and the phasing and the trippy effects and the backmasking, like part of it was I loved the sound, but it was also like from a historical point of view, like, man, they were doing some wild stuff with like 4-track, at the time. Like, how did they do this? And then when 8-track came around, they were really getting wild. Like, I don't know, there was just something about the historical aspect of it mixed with the sound that just kind of tripped something in me. And I always joke, like, I'm the squarest person to be into psychedelic stuff. Like, never really touched drugs, like
it is off brand. I'm not, you're my guy and all, but it is a little off brand. So that's what it's piqued my curiosity here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, Sam has his own history, his own past. There's maybe a reason he's into the psychedelic stuff.
Fair enough.
I, college happened for me too, but in a very small way. But I don't know. It's just that sound. And I really like the pop psych stuff too. I think it melds, especially the 1970s soft rock sound. There's something that happens in the late 60s, like 68, 69, that still is around in like 72, 73 with like Bread, like like Guitar Man or something still has kind of those effects. Sure. And so I think there was a little bit of that getting it from my dad. Like, and he had a Bread greatest hits tape.
Naturally.
It's the soft rock, it's the ballads, but there was always like a little something different about them. And so then when you're hearing like a group from the 60s, like Eternity's Children, which is a pop psych group, it's like super ballady and poppy, but with some of those effects, it's like, oh man, that kind of is Bread like. And this is like a rare record. Like, people like this style. Like, I like this style. And so then again, it's just that rabbit hole of like going down the different lanes and the different roads until you just like all of a sudden you're like looking up from the hole, like, how did they get down here?
That's awesome. Yeah. Cool, my man. All right, well, I have so many more questions I asked you, so I'll have to bring you back because there's so many things I want to hit on, but trying in the sake of time, I want to be pretty tight about the timing here, and obviously don't want to keep you up late here, but let's go to the lightning round. Round time. Are you ready? You need a drink or something? Because
I'm gonna take
a sip, Matt, because these are some of this is some Bill O'Reilly stuff about to hit you. This is some inside edition. Do it. All right. So lightning round questions. So in your collecting journey, what was the hardest record for you to find? And I don't mean not necessarily the most expensive or the rarest, like 1 of 500, but like for you that you were just like chasing and then you got it, and like a lot of us, you got it hopefully in the wild, and you lay out that audible like fist pump or like oh shit or something. Like, what was that record for you?
Man, this was a tough question because there's a ton of records that fit that mold for me, but one of the early ones, I was super cheap. Like I said, like $5 or less was like all I wanted to spend. Michael Jackson's Thriller was a record that I was like, I will find this for $1 or less. Like, I'm not going to pay more for it. I will not. Like Rumors and Hotel California were the other two. It was like, these are the three best-selling records of all time. There are literally millions of copies of these out there. I will find one for $1 or less. That freaking Thriller record, man, it was like, I didn't see it in record stores unless they were new reissues. I didn't see it at thrift store. No, I mean, for like 5, 6, 7 years. And then finally one day I walk into a thrift store and it was like, yes, 50 cents. It's coming home. Like, I found it. And then after that, it's that phenomenon of like, once you find it, it's everywhere. It's like every thrift store, every dollar bin. It was like, where were these copies?
Yes, the floodgates are open. Yeah.
So I know that's a super weird answer, but I was like, it was just one of those, like, I had that vendetta. Like, I will not pay more. I like that record, but not enough to pay $8 or $12. Like, it's $1. It's coming home with me. And I finally found it.
I can appreciate that discipline, because I think for me, I'm very competitive. And I think at some point, if I was in a similar shoes, and I'm sure I have been, I would, if it was there for $2, I would just, you know what I mean? So I hear you. But similar vein. So that was the hardest one. But what was like the most rewarding? Would it be the same thing, or was there one that you're like, it just really jazzed you up? It could have been a cheapie. It could have been something that had a personal attachment to you. Like, what was the most rewarding one for you to find?
Man, the most rewarding. That's a really good question. I'm gonna say probably Pet Sounds. That was always a record that I knew was considered great. My dad was a big Beach Boys fan. I knew that record front to back, like from a kid on up. But it was another record that was expensive, and I knew I wasn't going to find that in $1. You know, I did find a thrift store copy pretty early on, but it was trashed, and I was still excited to have it. But it was like, this is like a wall hanger. Like, I'll put it on the Crosley, you know, but it's not touching the real turntable.
Right, sure.
And then fast forward, you know, I don't know, 6 years ago or something, I'm at a St. Louis record show and looking through the bins, and this guy next to me pulls out Pet Sounds in like a $4 bin. And he was like, oh man, cool, Pet Sounds. And he sticks it back in, and I was like, you're not going to get that? He's like, no, I've got a copy. And it was like, okay, you know, like, I'll take it. It was like, again, it was a stereo copy. It was like VG, but it was definitely an upgrade for me. But it was like, yes, I finally have like a play copy that I can be proud to own. Like, it's not trashed. I can feel good about putting on the good turntable, sitting down and listening to it. And I've since upgraded again to it. But like, that was one that was like a milestone. Again, another one that was critically acclaimed, but also like a personal. My dad loved it. I loved it. My brother, who's not super into 60s music and not really into records, it was like one for him that he was like, oh, dude, you got Pet Sounds. Like, it just personally was a satisfying find.
Awesome. I can appreciate that. All right. So I'm trying to keep lightning round to the final 5. So that's 2. As a store owner and or collector, what's the record you just see all the time? Like, what's the one you're like, oh, this again?
Oh man! Aside from the normal thrift store fare, like the Mantovani and that kind of stuff,
Herb Alpert, sure.
Yeah, the Herb Alpert. It's honestly, it kind of comes and goes in waves. Like, for a long time, Billy Joel's The Stranger, we had like 20 copies of it, and now I've got none in the store. You know, like Carole King's Tapestry is another one. Like, these kind of cheap records, you know, they're like $3, $4, $5. There'll be like a period of 6 months where every collection you get has a copy or 2 copies. And then it's like, you realize a year later, you're like, we haven't had that record in 6 months or 8 months or whatever. And for whatever reason, it's shifted to a different cheapy kind of record. But Billy Joel's The Stranger has to be up there. Carole King's Tapestry has to be in the top 5. Oh man, there's a bunch in that kind of vein. Elton John's Honky Chateau is one we get a lot. Not like a super common Elton John record by any stretch, but not a rare one. But it's just, I don't know, that one's probably the most common Elton John record we have in our area. Yeah, Billy Joel the Stranger is like the first one that pops into my head. Like that's got to be up there. Like for a while, we considered like, could we fill a whole bin like of just put Billy Joel the Stranger on a tab? Like,
yeah, that's funny because there are shops like that have like the Hurt Alpert whipped cream cover all on the back wall. Or Steve Carlson had a video a few months ago where they had Huey Lewis and the New Sports, one of like my favorite records. Same thing, right? That'd be amazing. All right, home stretch, my friend. So, what does audiophile mean to you?
Stuff that I can't afford. Audiophile, I can appreciate people that are super into their audio equipment and their speakers and their system and their setup, and they want it to be as good as it can be. They want the best of the best. I totally get that. For me, I'm on a budget. I've always been on a budget. I've upgraded my equipment through the years. I feel like I've got a pretty decent setup now, but I would like a better receiver down the road. I would like better speakers. But I also know my limitations on my own hearing and my own ears. I've listened to music since I was a kid. I've gone to concerts since I was a teenager. When I was in high school, I was super into pop punk. I know, but we go to a lot of
judgment zone. This is like Planet Fitness, no judgment zone. All right.
Yes, but I would go to a ton of concerts and I'd be right up front by the speakers, and man, that has taken a toll on my hearing. Where, if I'm going to upgrade my speakers, I want to be able to know that I'm upgrading my speakers.
Sure.
And I've got a small record room. I don't need to have like a huge, I don't need the Klipsch Heresies or the Scalas or whatever they are.
JBLs,
yeah. Like decent setup is all I need. But the guys that are into it, I respect it. If they think they can tell a difference, I'm not going to judge them. I'm sure maybe you can tell a difference. I can't, like a lot of records in my collection are in VG condition because I don't always hear the crackle. I don't always hear the pop. I don't always notice the fidelity difference. Now there are some records for sure I've upgraded and like, oh man, I should have upgraded this a long time ago. But I think for me, it's just more about the listening experience than it is about the hearing experience. I just want the music in any way I can get it. I do a lot of Spotify listening on my phone with the crappy phone speakers or my crappy car speakers. And that's all. I'm not going to judge anybody that's into the big stuff.
Right on. All right, you made it. Last question. And again, this is a controversial one in certain areas of the vinyl community. Do you keep your records in the sleeve or behind the sleeve? There's no wrong answer in my opinion, but it can be very polarizing.
It can be, and Sam will take a hard line on this as well, where he's like, "No, you're wrong." But for me, it's a mix. I didn't used to care. I used to just put them all in the sleeve, and it was like, a $200 record was going in the sleeve is the same it was a $1 record. But now I've like upgraded. Anything that's like more than like $30, I've got a MoFi sleeve. If it's above $50, I'm taking it out and putting it in the back. Try to avoid those seam splits. Trying to be careful when you're pulling them on and off the shelf, not to do too much shuffling and it's kind of a mix. So I've made both people mad.
Equal opportunity offender.
Right.
I can appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, Matt, you did it. Thank you for humoring me with this conversation. Like when I started my YouTube channel, and you were always really supportive about that, and I eventually saw myself doing these type of like conversational things, but I also wanted to get to know guys like you and Brandon and people like I just seen at the record show, saw your YouTube stuff, and I really kind of wanted to pick your brains, but also learn a little bit about you, that kind of thing. So, and like I told you off before we even started, this is technically one of the first shows of the Vinyl Community Podcast. So not that comes with a takeaway prize or concert tickets or anything like that, but maybe one that badge of, the gold star. Remember that gold star you were talking about before? I'll get you one of those gold stars. But anyway, man, appreciate the time. Always love talking to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it big time, man. This was super fun. My Sunday morning routine. It's like I don't comment a ton on your videos because Sunday morning my wife and daughter go to Sunday school early. And so I've got like enough time at home where I'm like, Concert Buddy's got a new video. And I sit down on my TV with my breakfast and I watch your videos. And then I have a after that. So That's my routine. And it's nice. It's very relaxed.
Cool. Well, I'm glad they're gone, because sometimes I do have some colorful language in them clips. So it's probably the best that the ladies are gone. So
I love
anyway,
it.
Matt,
That's great.
thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Thank you very much, man.